So the way that this goes is the main reason why these sessions are happening is because this is an opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about the data set. If there's anything in particular that you need to take into consideration, if there's anything in particular that I want you to kind of think about when developing the reports or anything like that. That's one part of it. The other part that we're doing here is we're going to be talking about different visuals that could potentially be used for the data set. So I'm going to be showcasing some customization options, some things to take into consideration. Some of the things that I'm also going to be showcasing or talking about is something that I've gathered from a couple of previous challenges, like most common questions, most common points that people forget about or just don't pay enough attention to. So there's going to be different things that we're going to be going through. And of course, at the end, what we're going to have is a Q&A session. So throughout the whole session, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the questions. I'm going to try to answer every single one of them. If I'm not able to, I'll try to do it in an email afterwards, right? Also, if you don't feel comfortable with asking questions on live event, that's completely fine. Don't worry about it. What you can easily do is just write your questions to webinars@zoomcharts.com. So don't worry about it. There's plenty of different options that you can utilize. You can ask here, you can ask afterwards, you can send us an email. You can also use the Onyx Data community to ask questions, see if any you get an answer there. So there's just a bunch of different options that you can utilize, right? Nowadays, especially, there's ChatGPT. There's different things that you can utilize. But yeah, so what I'm gonna also do very quickly, for those of you who have already been a part of one of these before, you're already gonna know what I'm gonna be doing. But for those of you who are new, I just want to quickly reiterate a couple of things. So once the screen goes live, there we go. So this month's data set, June 2025, right? Few things that I want to reiterate. For those of you who are new for the challenges, we do have an option for you to get a developer's license. So what the developer's license does is it gives you a possibility to utilize ZoomCharts visuals free of charge for the sort of environment of challenges, right? You cannot utilize it afterwards for commercial uses and so forth, but within the realm of challenges and so forth, you can easily use every single one of our visuals. Like for example, all you have to do, in my case, I'm just going to sign in with Microsoft account. You can utilize also, you can use your own personal emails as well, or if you have a Microsoft account, use that. I'm going to sign up for the challenge as well. Don't worry, I cannot participate. It's part of the rules. But right here at the top right, you can see I have 𝗖𝗵 license. For those of you who are new, you're going to have here an option to sign up for developer's license. So what this essentially is, it's an account that we create for you that has access to all the ZoomCharts visuals. So you don't have to worry about licensing or anything like that. And also very conveniently right here, you have the submit report button. Now, when it comes to submission, for those of you who have been a part of the challenges before, you already have me heard saying this, but for those of you who are new, one thing to remember is that you can resubmit your report multiple times. There's no limitation on how many times you can resubmit your report, which means that you can also, for example, submit a report version that you feel comfortable with, but you just want to see our opinion or get our feedback on it. So you just submit your current version. We're going to go through it. We're going to give you some comments, some feedback as to what we think you should reconsider or think about, or maybe there's some errors that we found, anything like that, right? So we're going to give you that feedback, and it gives you enough time to go through it, fix those things, and resubmit your report. There's no limitation on how many times you can do this, right? The other thing is, do also understand that, at the end of the day, we're also human. So if you all submit at the very last hours of the submission deadline, there's not enough time for us to just personally go through these and give you feedback, right? So what I encourage you to do is do this couple of days prior to the deadline at least. If the sooner the better, right? So that gives you more time to work with it. But if you all submit at the last minute or last hour, we just cannot go through everything. So some of the reports are not going to get feedback only after already the submission has been closed. So take that in consideration. Whilst creating the challenge, sometimes people get confused or kind of worry about, okay, what am I going to be looking at or what I need to think about? So the one thing that I encourage you to do, this is also for those of you who have been in challenges before, go through the brief, right? The brief gives you a quick insight on what the data set is going to be about. And if you scroll down a bit lower, you can also see key questions to answer. This doesn't mean that you have to answer every single one of these, right? This is just basically a source of inspiration. This is a way on how we can provide certain sort of ideas, certain dimensions that we think could be beneficial to explore. It doesn't mean that you have to answer these. You can go for a completely different route. You can choose a completely different sort of approach to this. The report is something that you develop. Secondly, you're not limited to only the data set that we provide to you. What I mean by this, if there is any additional data that allows you to enhance the story of the data, you're more than welcome to modify the data set as well. Like for example, we're gonna talking about things in the data set. In the data set. It's sorry, English suddenly slipped away. So for example, engagement rate, right? There's going to be something like that in the data set. But engagement rate doesn't really give you a lot of information unless you know what's the benchmark. So what am I comparing it against? Is it good or bad, right? I don't know. Engagement rate of 10%, is it good, bad? I don't know. So what you can do is you can just Google. Just Google, for example, in this case, we're in the IT, it's an IT company. There's different content types and so forth. So just Google what are the typical or average or benchmarks that you should compare against, right? If you find those, utilize that as an additional dimension for the data. That's something that you can use for comparison. Because otherwise, if you just give me an oversight and tell me, okay, the average engagement rate is, I don't know, 15%, okay, is it good, bad, terrible? Is it okay? I don't know, right? So try to provide a little bit more context to the end users as well. And that also might give you additional ideas on how to, for example, visualize things or what sort of approach you're taking on this, right? So don't limit yourself only to the Excel file that you get. The Excel file is the base. What you do with it and how you navigate it is completely up to you. So utilize everything that is basically possible to you, right? Use Google, use ChatGPT, use whatever you want. You're more than welcome to do it. All right, so that's that submission we talked about, a little bit about the data set. We're going to go through it afterwards as well. Another thing is you also have the option of signing up for one-on-one sessions. So one-on-one sessions are 15-minute quick calls that you do with me. We go through some of your questions if you have any. If not, then I'll try to provide as much information from my side as possible regarding the things that you are interested in. If you sign up to one of these, it will be great if you also let me know what you want to talk about, right? I'm okay with spitballing. That's good. That's okay. But if I have a little bit of pre-knowledge as to what I'm jumping into, it allows me also to prepare something. Because sometimes the questions that you're asking or the situations that you're describing isn't something I can cook up very quickly in 15 minutes, right? It's something that I have to pre-configure, make sure that it kind of tells the story or covers the thing that you are looking for, right? But you have the possibility to sign up for these, so utilize also that resources. And of course, there's previous workshops that you can look into. There's different interesting things that we have covered. Like for example, recently we also had the previous workshop that we had. We covered how to create design templates using Figma for Power BI, right? How to create layouts, how to create color palettes, and so forth. So one thing that you can do is go to resources, webinars. These are upcoming events. If you scroll down, here's the archive of everything that we've done before. Take a look at some of these. Maybe there's some additional information. Look at some of the top 5 announcements as well, because those are going to give you an insight of how we go through, for example, reports and what are the things that we're looking for, right? So there's different types of information that you can always look into. All right, talking about the data set itself. In this case, we have a flat table, right? There's no additional table or sheet regarding the definitions. So in this case, what I would recommend as well is if you're like me, who doesn't know every single marketing term that's out there, use Google, ChatGPT, whatever you want to help you understand what is the data that you're looking into, right? Like for example, if we look right here, post ID, I think we all get what it means, right? There's no issue with that. Platform based on the content, okay, get it. Content type, organic versus sponsored, kind of understandable. content category, understandable, type okay, region okay, longitude, latitude, yep. Then we start to go here, right? Engagement, views, likes, shares, comments. Views, likes, shares, comments, understandable. For me, for example, the first thing that I wanted to understand fully is we have engagement and we have impressions. If you don't know what each of those means, just Google it. Don't try to complicate things. Very simple. Open up your browser. Impressions in marketing meaning. In marketing, an impression refers to a number of times an ad piece of content is displayed to a user, regardless of whether they click or engage with it. This kind of already gives you an insight on what engagement is, right? So, impression is just how many times that particular post has been seen, whereas engagement means that somebody has actually taken an action towards it. But don't be afraid to just look at things. There's not going to be point detection because you're learning. This is what the challenges are all about. We're trying to give you an environment where you're free to explore, to try out new things. And if you get stuck on something, reach out for help, right? Just send the questions and we'll try to reply to every single one of your questions. All right, what else? For the data set, make sure you load it in, make sure you check the data types. Like for example, one thing you can see right here, I have changed the data type. And what I actually did is if we look at the data itself, I'm not going to save the changes afterwards, but we can see right here we have two columns which are essentially referring to date and time. So we have post published at and post date. So in some cases right here, if we convert this into a date and time, there's not going to be any issues because we have different timestamps, we have different dates. That's all good. Whereas this one, if we look at the data that we have within it, so that's the post date, right? That's just the date. So having the extra dimension of time, which is always going to be 12 a.m., or in some cases it's even missing, just convert this into a date. Remove the unnecessary part, keep things simple and clean just so you can understand, okay, this is that. We're going to be working with this type of information. I can use this for this and so forth, right? So make sure you qualify the data, you clean it. If there's something that's very confusing to you, get rid of it. You don't have to use every single little bit that's in here, right? You can focus on something very specific and just showcase that part of it. Okay, so I'm going to close this as well. I'm not going to save the changes because I removed the change type. And yeah, remember guys, in Power Query, if you remove a certain step, there's no undo button. You can't get that step back. Discard changes. Discard. There we go. So what have I done here? In this case, I've created a couple of KPI cards. I have used the timeline visual. I have used 2 instances of a donut visual and 3 instances of a combo bar. Right? I'm looking at a couple of categorical data. I'm looking at additional categories where there's not too many of them within a donut chart, and then a timeline just to kind of see a reference level across the time itself. The one thing that I want whilst building this, I would say how I essentially go through it, right? The first thing that I almost every single time do is try to understand if there's enough data within it and how much data is there actually available. I don't do it in the Power Query. The Power Query I usually use to kind of quickly get an insight into what's available, but it's only when you start to visualize things when you're going to notice certain bits and pieces that maybe you want to readjust. So in my case, for example, what I did is I'm actually gonna open up the filter panel because I hide it most of the time. I don't use it, but you can see there is one filter that I have applied. And the reason why I'm using this filter is the following. If I create a timeline right now based on all the data that's available to me, I'm going to go with post count. Okay, you can see a yearly disparity. That's probably because 2025 is not a full year. So, but if we switch this to a monthly view, you can see that, okay, these months have all started and finished, whereas for May, there's very little information. So if I actually drill down into May, I can see there's only data for May 1st. Having this, not ideal. So what I would recommend probably is just create a filter. And in this case, I don't want it to be available for any other chart or any other page. So what I would do is I would create a filter, sorry, not on this page, but filter on all pages, have it based on date. Advanced filters is before, and it's going to be the 1st of May. Funny enough, that's my birthday. So there you go. But it's before 1st of May 2025. So now, if I go here and I have things on a monthly granularity, you can see the month of May is not here, but the chart also looks a lot better. Rather than just having one day of May, just one single day of posts, eh, it's not necessary. Remember, this is just a use case, right? You can modify it if it's necessary. Nobody's gonna tell you that no, it's very bad practice. In reality, of course, you have to think about what I'm gonna do, but this is a challenge, so you can play around with this one. What else? Once you have a timeline by itself, don't forget that you also have different other ways in how you can analyze the date aspect of things. So what I mean by this is if I go to the challenge page, I think it was one of the questions as well. So challenges, brief, and if we go let here, we're gonna see types, that's okay. Platform hashtags, maximum engagements, and differences in regions. What are ideal days and hours to publish content for maximum engagement? The first initial thought process probably would be, okay, I could use a timeline for it. My answer for it is don't use a timeline for it. Quite simply, reason for it is very simple. The timeline is essentially a calendar, right? It follows a calendar logic. It means all the data is continuous. So if you filter out a single day, so for example, if we go for a daily view, and if I have day name, I think I have a separate column I created. Where is it? There we go. So I don't need a chart. I don't need a sum. Day name. Okay, day number. This is actually it, not day name. Sorry. So if I choose a particular day, you can see this is what happens, right? I'm getting the data only for that day across the timeline. Sure, this is a great way on how I can look, for example, into insights of whether on a monthly level there's any seasonality to the days that I post or anything like that. But it's not going to give me an insight of what days in per se are better than others. So, what I would recommend to do this sort of analysis, where I want to understand ideal days and hours for publishing, I'd say it's a combination of two visuals. It's a combination of a timeline visual where you have the overall overview of the whole timeline, and then have something like a combo chart, which is meant for categorical data. And this is where you use your, actually, I'm going to rename it because otherwise it's not just confusing for you, but it's also confusing for me. So that's not the name, it's actually the number. So day number and post hour, which is already part of the data set, based on the number of posts. There we go. This is all going to be sorted. Since it's categorical data, it's going to be sorted based on the value. So the highest value is here, the lowest is here. But the way I see it, it's probably going to be easier if I sort it based on the day itself. So starting from Monday up until Sunday. So we can see that the highest peak is on Wednesdays. If I open up Wednesdays, I can see the hours of the day. I can choose, for example, okay, I can see there's a gap here and here. If I want to focus on this aspect, I can cross-filter the information and look at this. I can have a card on the side. So there are different ways on how you can analyze things, right? The one thing that I would just want you to kind of think about is you don't have to showcase everything straight away. Don't forget that the charts, sorry, work as cross filters. So by interacting with a specific column, by selecting something, you're cross filtering the data, and that's showcasing only a subset of what's available. So that's a great way on how you can create a story for the end users, right? You allow them to explore it by giving them some hints, for example. You can have additional overlays that explain how to interact and so forth. But yeah, that's one of them. Timeline is 99% of the time something that you have within your data set, as long as you have a date dimension as a part of it. The second thing that I would recommend is make sure you always have a reset button. This is going to be part of the feedback. I can tell you probably around 95% of the times whenever we send it out for challenge participants. I get that you want to utilize as much space as possible for the visuals. Very good. It looks good, it feels good. So kudos for that. But unless there is a simple way for the user to get back to the beginning, it's very frustrating if I, for example, select, let's say, Canada, entertainment. If I select this hashtag, I select TikTok as a platform. So I did a lot of things, right? And if I don't have a reset, I have to basically clear everything from every single visual, which is super annoying, right? Reset just allows me to click on it, start fresh. So just build a reset button for every single page that you have within the report, or you can create sort of a master clear reset by not associating it with a particular page, but just the data portion of it. Because you can do this under bookmarks right here. You can see by default it's marked in, but you can also disassociate it. So it's just going to look at the data level of things. So you can build it also like that. What else? When creating cards or KPIs, do think about whether it makes sense or not. Like what I did is I'm not a marketing expert, right? I don't know what are going to be the main KPIs. I just do what I'm asked for, and I ask questions if I don't understand it. It's simple as that. So what I did is, for example, you can see here total post count, total impressions, total engagements, which is kind of okay if you want to just understand overall situation within a single company, how many posts we have, how many impressions in total. But for example, when things go to like average engagement rate, it works okay if it's a very simple overview, but it's not ideal if you decide that you want to compare different, for example, platforms or something, right? You can't really summarize multiple different content types, then just divide them based on different platforms, based on different regions, where every single thing has different meanings, benchmarks, and so forth. So those need to be taken into consideration. But for this instance, since it's just a basic sample, right, it's okay. It's just to kind of showcase the idea. But what I did is I basically went with sort of a funnel, right? I started off with I want to understand how many posts we have in total. I want to understand how many times those posts have been seen. I want to understand how many people have engaged with them. I want to understand what's the conversion rate for that. And I also want to understand how many users have actually clicked through the website or started the purchasing process. We don't unfortunately have the full path of things, right? But it's sort of a funnel of how things are transitioning uh, between the layers. So cards, make sure that they actually tell a proper story. If you're going to be using any sort of comparison, we talked about this before. We're going to probably talk about it also in this top five. Hopefully not, but most probably. If you, for example, create a comparison, let's say a month over month basis or year over year basis, make sure that it's applicable to the view that you have available. What I mean by this, if there's going to be a card which is going to say month over month is like 15%, for example, right here, but you're going to give me a timeline of almost 1.5 year, my question is which month against which month are you comparing right now? Because 99% of the time people forget about how Power BI creates that logic, right? Based on what's available. So if I select, for example, April, those numbers are suddenly going to change. So it's not the last month. What it is in reality is just an average of what's available. But that's not what I wanted to see. It clearly says month over month, right? So I want to see which month against which month is being compared. If not, then create a case that says that hey, if there's more than 1 month available, then you just showcase not applicable or something like that, or just showcase a blank, not fully a blank. Blank usually confuses people. Try to avoid showcasing in cards a name blank, right? Because usually that creates sort of feeling that something has broken. It's not that something's not available, but specifically that something is broken. So try to avoid those. What else? Whenever you're creating charts, for example, I created a timeline and I have used the engagement level as my legend. So I'm splitting the whole column into segments, creating a stacked column chart. By default, essentially how this is done, just to also showcase to you. So if I create it based on the date hierarchy, I'm going to use a date. I'm going to use post count and then engagement level right here in the legend. By default, this is going to be a clustered column chart. But if you go into the formatting options, series default, you can right here switch the display from clustered to stacked. So that's something you can utilize as well. But the reason why I started to talk about it is, for example, this one. If I add that particular uh, data to the legend right here, see, you can see that it's sorting in an alphabetical order. The timeline itself is going to be chronological. That's fine. But right here, the legend is high, low, medium, right? What I wanted to have here is one particular way, whether it's, for example, high, medium, low, or it's low, medium, high. You decide how you want to show it or what you want to emphasize on first. But usually you want to have some sort of an order, right? In some cases, high, low, medium is actually what people prefer to, because you kind of want to understand, okay, what's the high, what's the low, and medium's okay. I want to understand the 2 points of interest. So how do you convert this, or how do you define it to look a little bit different? Well, one way is by creating another table and giving it order. And that's what I did in this case as well. Or we're going to do it as well. So what I did is, you can see I have right here a separate table, which has just engagement level and order. And what I did here is I said to the engagement level that there's going to be a custom sort, and the sort is coming from order. So now if I use this engagement level and not the original one, you can see that now it's high, medium, low. If I go back to the original, it's going to be high, low, medium. That's one thing. The other thing that's happening right now, you can see we have these 3 colors. If I switch to a different engagement level, these colors also change, which might seem infuriating for you, might raise few eyebrows, right? Why is it happening? It's also not the same here, but it's different here. There are different color assignment principles for charts. The reason why these colors suddenly change is because this engagement level is not the same engagement level as this one. Those come from 2 different tables, which means that 2 different indexes are being created for them. Whenever new data is being introduced into the visual, it's being read as a new entry unless it has been specified otherwise. In this case, it hasn't been specified otherwise. These are just different data points that are coming in and then coloring it based on the new IDs that I'm essentially receiving from it. In the donut chart, the color is assigned based on the name of the column itself. Here, high, low, high, medium, low, it's also the same. So for example, if I go into the colors and open the color palette, you can see this is how it's being assigned, right? This is the first one, the second one, the third one, and so forth. So it goes through that color palette. So that's something to keep in mind, right? When you're switching between things, when you're creating legends, just think about the logical aspect of it. Does it make sense? Is it fully understandable, and so forth? Coloring is the next one. I have exactly the same 3 colors here, exactly the same 3 colors here, even the same data. It's engagement level. But in this case, medium is red. In this case, low is red. Make sure the color is consistent, right? You do not want to kind of swap around them, mix in different pages and different charts. The only thing it's going to create is confusion for the end user. That's the last thing you want to do, right? Make it consistent. So for example, if this is the way on how you want to have it, just go to the donut chart, for example, open up category colors, and then just change it. So high is going to be left the same, medium is going to be orange, whereas low is going to be red. So now that at least if I select something here, the same corresponding color is going to be here, and not like a mix match version of things, right? What else? Play around with the visuals. Please, I beg you, play around with the visuals. And what I mean by this is not just play around with the formatting options, but it also mean that when you create a report, you actually see how the charts interact with each other. Try selecting something here, for example. Okay, cross filtering is working. Great. Select the engagement level here. Okay, still working. All good. Select something here and see just okay. Okay, I can see there's only two options here. These look okay. Just see how the charts react to each other and see if you can spot any edge cases. In this case, actually, this chart is an edge case. What I mean by an edge case is that it only has two different categories underneath it. The combo bar chart by default, what it does is it's always going to try to kind of stretch out these to fill the area that's available, right? So by default, it would look something like this. I forced it to kind of have those two separate columns. So how it would look by default is we can switch it out here. So what I did is under y-axis, there's max unit height. And I think it's by default something like 400. Oh, I can actually do this reset to default. Yeah, it's 400. So if I switch between the pages, allow it to do a fresh reload of itself, you can see this is what would happen, right? These two massive columns. But at the same time, if I start to cross filter information, let's say, for example, the hashtag one, where there's only going to be a few of them, it kind of looks weird where I have three columns here, then two massive columns here, then there's like 8 of them here, right? Different size columns. It's very confusing, not very intuitive. So don't forget that you have the controls to define how things are going to look and feel, how big they can become, how small are they by initial load, and so forth. So in this case, I think it was something like 70 or something like that. So by doing that, what I did is that if I drill down under a particular category, you can see that these now are a lot smaller. It's still not ideal. I think it was 60. So I kind of want to get close to what other combo bar charts might end up with if they only have few options. Yeah, you can see now this is slightly smaller than this one, so this one needs to be, again, a little bit smaller. And this is the blank that I was talking about, right? Try to avoid blanks as a plague, basically. If you have situations where it can become blank, it just means that you need to change the measure, or in this case, if it's just a simple value, replace it with a measure where you define also that, hey, if a situation happens that the result is blank, return me not applicable or 0 if it's necessary, right? Something that tells the user what really is happening, not just blank or no data, whatever. Blank feels like something is broken. So that's one thing. What else? Gonna reset quickly. Drill down. Don't be afraid to use drill down. What we've seen also lately in a lot of submissions is people kind of want to create a two-dimensional report. What I mean by this is you can select a lot of things. You can also do this with drill downs, where basically you select multiple properties, you define what you're going to be looking at, right? But there's no depth to this. There's only basically a filtering effect to it. So don't be afraid to add some additional drill down levels. Like for example, right here, if we have a platform, I think for platform we also had so we had total posts by platform, and let's say content type as well. So something that would allow me to kind of explore it a bit further. I forgot what I had there. Can't say content category. It's not going to be ideal because it's going to cross filter here. But another thing to avoid is, for example, I decided, okay, it's going to be platform and content category, right? So the second level is going to be content category. If I'm going to drill down, still looks okay. The problem is that these two charts are now sharing the same one, the same dimension as the metric that they're looking into. So if I select something here now, suddenly there's just one single column, but this column actually also has content type underneath it. So ideally it would drill down, right? So I can kind of look into it, but it's not going to happen because the charts don't communicate with each other. What I mean by this is they share transfer data. So the chart understands what data is available, but there are no indications for the chart to actually drill down to the next level, right? That action is only captured by the visual that you interacted with, not everything else on the report page. So that's something to think about as well. Try to avoid putting the same dimension in multiple charts. Otherwise, you're basically just cutting off options for the user to cross filter information. So that's just something to think about as well. So yeah, KPIs, reset button, different chart types, multiple drill down levels. Play around with what's available in different chart types. Don't try to, for example, I don't know, you really like, let's say, you really like how the donut chart looks like or it feels like and so forth. Do not use it for cases where it's just not a good choice, right? For example, we have hashtags. I think there were like 15 of them unique ones. This is not a great chart. You can see the connectors are all over the place. It's kind of hard to read it. So I much rather you use a combo bar for it. If you have a few categories, like for example, in this case, you have 3 main categories, that's fine. For platforms, I think we have 6 or 7 of them. So what I did is instead of just again showcasing all of them, we actually have, yeah, 6 of them. I could showcase all 6 of them, but let's say my main point of entry is I want to understand what are going to be the top 3. So what are the most important platforms that we're posting our content on? So that's going to be the top 3. So I'm going to have others, number of slices 3, and the rest of them are going to be others. I can still explore the others. I can click on it and explore these and compare it to each other, but I just want to focus on the top 3 initially. Yeah, please show your tables as well. Britt, I'll be honest, since it's a quick sample, I don't have dimension tables. I'm just working currently with a flat table. But what I would recommend, and of course for a good data model, is creating dimensions. So what you could do with dimensions is you create one for the content, create one for engagement, not engagement level, there's only one, no need to. Platforms, regions, here you can have something like post type. So just a few of them. You don't necessarily have to create everything as a separate dimension, only if it actually benefits the end result. If there's more additional data regarding a dimension, then create a dimension table. If there's just a single column, there's no need to create a dimension just for a single column. So yeah, that's another thing to kind of think about. What else? When it comes to these sort of reports where you have, for example, a lot of different metrics or numbers that you could essentially be looking into, one beneficial thing that you can utilize, and which is actually pretty easy to utilize, is the field parameters. So field parameters is something that's not created by ZoomCharts. It's something that Power BI offers itself. So in order to do that, you need to go to modeling, new parameter, and fields. There's hundreds of different guides online on YouTube that you can find for this, where step by step it's explained. But essentially what you do is you use the fields. Let's say I'm going to call it value switch. For the values, if it's going to be a numerical value that you want to switch, make sure that this is a measure and not a column. Numerical columns are not going to be providing you with the necessary information. The values need to be converted to a measure. You need a single value to be displayed for it. So I'm going to go with things like I want to see the post count, I want to see the total likes, shares, views. I'm going to switch around the order. So post count, views, likes, shares, and I don't think I have counted comments. but we have comments right here, so that's something I could utilize afterwards. Let's say these four. You can keep the slicer or you can remove it and add it afterwards. I'm going to keep it. Oops, went into a drill down accidentally. So this is what the field parameter does for me. It creates a new data table which has the following DAX formula within it. How it looks for you is it creates a slicer because I left the marker on. I'm going to move the reset button here. Remember, this is just a work material, right? I'm going to create the final look afterwards. But what this now allows me to do is on the data section, it has created this new table. I can use this new value, switch value, in, for example, not there, but as a series. This one's going to be a series. So value switch. Then what I'm going to do is make sure that this is a single selection because I'm only going to be focusing on one of them, right? There's no logic in combining or summing up together post count and views. Absolutely no reason for that. So what you do is you limit it to a single selection. But what it does allow the end user is to say that, hey, I want to look at the timeline based on the post count. Cool, here it is. I want to look at total views. Cool, here it is. See, it rescales the axis and everything. Total likes. Again, different numbers, total shares, and so forth. So you allow the user to essentially utilize the same visual space for different metrics. You can do this also for categories that you're using in the legends. You can do this also to determine, for example, a dynamic hierarchy where you can select something, drill down into it if it's necessary, switch the order or how things are being utilized. Like, for example, right? Let's say the platform and post type. Let's create a new parameter. Let's create a little bit of room for this. So new parameter fields. What did I say? It's going to be, there we go. It's going to be platform post type. The reason why I'm naming these is just so I understand what is this parameter. Otherwise, there's going to be parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 3. I'm going to go with post type is 1 and platform is the other one. The order doesn't matter too much for me right now. But in this one, I actually want to be able to select both of them. The reason for this, do I have enough room? It's gonna be fine. Remember, work in progress, right? So what I'm gonna do now is instead of defining specifically what's gonna be the hierarchy, I'm actually gonna be using the field value parameter. I'm gonna put it in. This might happen sometimes as well. When you put values into the visual, see, for example, it says that, hey, it's 50-50, but you know that based on the values, it should be something different. The reason why this is happening is because it's essentially counting the times that these two categories show up. So in order to switch it, you go to this little arrow right here, or right click on it, and switch to show values of selected fields. So now what this allows me to do is, for example, I can allow the user to say, hey, I actually want to focus on the platform, or I want to focus on the post type, right? If I would have a single selection, for example, if I force it as a single selection. So either this or that. So you can kind of change how things look. But if I allow a multi-select, what this allows me to do is I can hold down control, for example, and I can say that, hey, I actually want to go from platform to post type. So now there's a drill down. If I go the other way around, I clear the selection and say, hey, you first select post type and then platform. This is the drill down the other way around, right? So field parameters together with visuals allow you to just save space and allow you to analyze different combinations and different dimensions. But the one thing that you have to be cautious about is that if you make things, in a sense, too dynamic, it's going to be too finicky and too weird for the end user, right? There's too many movable parts. Basically, the way I would explain this is think about something like a choice paradox, right? If we only have two options between vanilla ice cream and chocolate ice cream, maybe like 50% of us are going to be dissatisfied because, well, I wanted the other one. Okay. If you give me like 10 different options, there's probability of 90% to be dissatisfied. Reason for that is because there were just too many options to choose from. I kind of wanted this one, but then afterwards I decided, nah, I really wanted to choose the other one, or nah, I'm feeling like I wanted to try the other one, or something like that, right? So try to keep them available, but to a certain extent, because you can change almost every single aspect of things, but don't go that far. Create views that allow you to focus on things. So yeah, field parameters, drill down levels, reset buttons, some KPIs, color consistency if you have it available as well. Like for example, right? You can see right here, platform YouTube, for example, is blue. If I go the route with a drill down, you can see that under video, YouTube is suddenly this color. Consistency. The reason why it's different, well, the way it's created is basically it's creating a unique identifier again. So instead of just looking at the platform name, which is used now, in this combination, I'm essentially using post type plus platform. That's creating a concatenated version, and that's a unique ID, which needs to be reassigned a color again. So there are different things to take into consideration. As far as what type of analysis I would do probably with this sort of data set is, sure, you can go with some sort of an overview, that like a primary page which allows you to look at certain data and just understand the overall situation. But based on what data is available, all the shares, likes, conversion, we don't have conversion rate, but we have engagement rate, we have click through rate, and so forth. Like I said, looking at all of it together might not be the best scenario. So, what I would probably do is, one option is I would create a comparison. So think about it like this, right? We have two different side by sides where on one side you're comparing, let's say, one content type and the other one has the other content type. And you're going through main KPIs, you're showing the timeline, you're showing the differences between them in the middle or something like that. So a versus sort of type of scenario. That's one of them. The other one would be probably specific analysis of a channel based on other variables. What I mean by this is, instead of like a card principle, I would just allow the user to open a similar page to this one, but by default, you already have pre-selected, let's say, one specific content type or one specific platform. And that's the main thing you're focusing on. You cannot have multiple platforms at the same time, but you want to be able to choose one or the other and just try to understand, okay, how are they comparing to each other? All right. I want to also be cautious about the time and just make sure that we cover the questions if we have any. So, do we have any questions? We have one question. Okay. Let's see what the question is. I only have one table for the dataset, so I'm seeing that from yours you had more tables. How? These tables were created afterwards. So, all these tables, for example, these two were a creation of field parameters. So, when I created those field parameters, it created these two tables. Then I had a calendar table. The calendar table is necessary for those cases if you're going to be doing some time-based analysis, if you're going to be creating calculations for month over month, like same time previous month, or any sort of those combinations. Then you need a calendar. In my case, what I did is I just used the DAX formula. So I went to, the way I created is I went to modeling, new table, and the formula I used is calendar, where the minimum date comes from the post date and the maximum also comes from post date. And what's the third one that I had? This one was for the custom sort. So for the custom sort, I just entered data. And the data within it is quite simple. Where it was, table. You can see engagement levels. I copied exactly the same names, and then I just gave them order and sorted them customly. Okay, any other? We got one more. Let's go. Can we delete post published ads columns as post hour separate column is available? Um, Yes and no. What I mean by this yes and no is the following, right? So if we go to the whole data set, we do have the information essentially duplicated, right? We have the post published at, we have post date, and we have post hour. If the time unit itself is not something that's interesting to you, because you can see this is also done on different minutes, not just hours. So 3:03 p.m., 6:44 p.m. If the minute part of it is not something that you're going to be taking into consideration at any point of time, get rid of it. You don't need it. You're more than well suited to just go with the date and the hour. That's fine. If the minutes is something that you're going to be using, then keep it. Otherwise, these two are enough. All right. Anything else? No. Okay. So that gives me some time to actually remind you guys. So what I'm gonna ask my team is, can we get yeah, we have the QR for the feedback form. So don't forget to also leave your feedback. The reason why I'm begging for this or reminding this all the time is because the feedback forms have help us to understand whether or not we're doing a good job, whether or not these sessions are becoming too repetitive, whether or not you think that these sessions are, unvaluable. There's no additional sort of info or insights or any value in this. Tell us about it. Tell us also what you would like to see, what you would like to kind of look into if necessary and so forth, because it allows us to understand how to structure the whole sort of flow for new challenges, right? So by leaving your feedback, you're also helping us to understand how, if we're doing a good job or doing a bad job, and what would you like to change. Speaking about feedback, what you can also do is you can leave a review for the visuals, right? So for example, if you really like the donut chart, what you can do is you can also go to the app stores and write a review about it, because that helps us also to, get higher recognition. We scratch your back, you scratch our back. Man, think about it like that. But what we also recommend is, if you have any ideas, any feedback also on the chart itself, let's say, hey, I would really like to see this sort of feature added to the visual. Okay, send it to us. You can go to our website, there are forms for that, so you don't have to worry about it. Like, the way I usually explain this is, the more you tell us about or how the visuals work or what you would like to see in them and so forth, the higher the chance that this is something that we're going to be implementing, right? Think about it like this. If there is no requests regarding, I don't know, creating a particular selection type, there's no reason for us to add it. If there's more people asking about certain features, there's a higher probability that those are going to be introduced. Like, for example, one of the things we introduced, well, relatively recently, right, was the inverted selection. So, for example, you can see right here, I selected medium, and if I do a triple left click on it, it deselects medium and selects low and high. So it selects everything that was unselected. So the more you request, the higher the chance that things are going to be added. For the waterfall, we recently also added the possibility of commenting and markers. Okay, we have one more question. Sure. Can you go through the donut chart again? I missed the explanation. Which part or what exactly about? I'm not entirely sure. I did a couple of things about the donut chart. There were field parameters, there were coloring. Anything in particular that you want me to take a look at quickly again? Sorry, Balikis, I just don't know exactly which part you want me to cover. That's why I'm trying to clarify. Meanwhile, anything else? No. Okay. I can see from Sandra, please is it compulsory to create more tables? No. You can also create a basic report with just a flat table. it is not necessary to create additional tables if you're going with a simple use case. Yeah, that's the one. So you can create a basic report also without any additional tables, without any DAX calculations or anything. The DAX calculations and additional tables just allow you to have a little bit more flexibility and room. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I'm going to remind top, left, right. I don't know where it's going to be exactly for you, but we have the feedback form. So don't forget to fill it in, right? It just helps us to understand whether or not we're doing a good job. The review, if you can leave one, awesome. If you don't want to, awesome. It's okay. And yeah, just a reminder, you guys also have the possibility of signing up for one-on-one sessions. So if you have some questions that you want us to go through in specific, showcasing your report just to understand the use case and so forth, sign up for those and we can chat afterwards. Other than that, that's going to be it for me today. Thank you so much for attending. I hope it was interesting and insightful. I can see Alien posted that it was useful information. Happy for that. Otherwise, what am I doing here? Let's do double donut. Like there's pie chart inside the pie chart. Oh, this is just our donut chart, the way it works. So essentially, if you create a hierarchy, the drill down shows you the previous selection, and this is the next layer. So for example, if you're not even using field parameters, but you're just using typical data, let's say, I don't know, region goes down to platform. From platform, it goes down to content type. Every single time I select something, it's going to drill. What was that? It goes down to the next layer and it shows you the previous levels as a reference layer. So that is just built in into the visual. There's no additional things you need to do. If we add platform types to the report as icon, how can we use them as filter? If you add platform types as a report as an icon, how we use them as a filter? You can use the, I don't think the list slicer is supported in publish to web environment, so I would stay away from it. But you can use worst case scenario. You can use custom visuals, and if you have images for different platforms, there's probably different other visuals as well. But the one that I'm pretty used to is just a chiclet slicer. So chiclet slicer allows you to showcase images for slicer buttons. But there's different other options as well. You can actually also use images on a donut chart as well if you want to. There's a field for slice images as well. You're more than welcome, guys. All right, that's gonna be it from me. I hope it was interesting and useful. And remember, you do also have an option to watch this as a recording afterwards if there are certain things that you want to go through again. And from my side, the only thing left to say is have fun. Make sure you submit a report, try out, doesn't have to be perfect, and I'll see you in the top 5 announcement webinar. Thank you, everyone. Bye.